I now give the floor to Mr. Randy Credico.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a speech that I wrote here, but I have some eye issues with stigmas in spots, so I'm going to have to do what I've done for 50 years as a public speaker, and that is kind of extemporize and make it shorter, and I can speak from the heart. And thank everybody on this distinguished council for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and my experience as it relates to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, and the escalation and the potential of more arms going into Ukraine from the U.S. government, which I strongly oppose. This morning I saw a lot of women in Kiev, mothers of conscripted Ukrainians on the street. I haven't seen this before, asking for demobilization. So that is picking up in Ukraine, and I think it's going to continue.
We will not tolerate politicians or anyone else putting down Muslims and blaming Muslims for a few people. We know what it's like to be demeaned. We know what it's like to have a few people who act against the highest visions of our tradition to then be identified as the value of the entire tradition. And one of the reasons that we in Tikkun magazine, a magazine of liberal and progressive Jews, but also an interfaith magazine, have called upon the United States to stand up to the part of the Israeli government that is oppressing Palestinians is that we as Jews understand that our commitment is to recognize that God has created everyone in God's image and that everyone is equally precious, and that means the Palestinian people as well as all other people on the planet.
Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vredos. A great and dear friend, colleague, and comrade of over 40 years passed last week. Rabbi Michael Lerner was also a great friend of this show and appeared numerous times discussing his many books, activism, and prophetic vision. Whether you agreed with him or not, very few denied that he was a visionary and a fierce champion for peace and social justice against great odds, following in the tradition of the Hebrew biblical prophets, the Baal Shem, Martin Buber, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Susanna Heschel, Reb Zalman, Rabbi Arthur Wasco, and a great many others involved in the movement. When I thought of another great friend and our guest today, Randy Credico, I began to realize some striking similarities. Randy is a skilled comedian, satirist, award-winning radio host, international activist. But I saw other things that compared him and Michael. They were both in-your-face political activists as they spoke truth to power. Both served time in jail for their political protests. Both moved great numbers of people toward a radical love they didn't know existed in them. Randy through his brilliance as a satirist and a comedian, allowing people to open their hardened hearts and laugh. And Michael through his work in Tikkun, the magazine he founded, whose vision was to heal and repair the world. Each rebuffed and were rebuffed by powerful establishment forces. Randy in the entertainment world for speaking politically on The Tonight Show when he was told not to, and Michael for going against the dominant religious and political Jewish establishment. They are and were both visionaries, people who point the way toward a better future against all odds. Randy and Michael are those rare individuals who put themselves on the line and choose to risk being closer to the precipice than the rest of us, so that we all might have a chance at a better future. Welcome. It's so great to have you here, Randy. I wonder if I've, in the comparison to Michael here, what you may make.
The past tense. You say we were.
That's right. That's right. You're here. You're here. I apologize. Yes.
Well, it's hard to
he
say.
Has passed on. You,
right.
You are more than alive and well, and we
alive and not well.
All right. Well, that's better than being dead and unwell. That's the extreme thing.
How about being dead and well?
Well, I guess we could hope that maybe Michael is somewhere. He's dead, and hopefully he is well wherever he is.
Yes, he's a great, great man, and it's thank you, generous of you to make comparisons. But
no, I mean,
I'm not in his league. I'm not in his league, but
well, you're yes, you are. You are in your own world. You have been. You've been there. You've been there for people, and I do count you as a dear friend, as a colleague and an activist who I know can, if I call up, and I did, we talked. You were ready to do this, help with this fundraiser for Cornell West, and we'll get into that as well. But I want to, because I know we're going to cover a lot of things here, but I want to start with the clip that you sent me, and I'm sure a number of other people, about the your talk at the UN Security Council, in which you advocated non-funding of the war in Ukraine. So would you give us a little background to that and let our audience understand what that was all about?
Well, look, I've opposed the Ukrainian proxy war, Russian proxy war through Ukraine from the outset, and I have nothing against Ukrainians. I have a lot of Ukrainian friends out here out there in Coney Island, and Russian friends, and so it pains me to see anybody die. But I was in Russia and Ukraine March and April of 2023, and I ended up in the war zone. That's a long story in itself, and spent a week driving around Mariupol and Donetsk in a armored vehicle, and I saw a lot of I didn't see them. I saw them the next day. But I could hear them. Missiles, HIMARS missiles that are made by Lockheed that banged into civilian areas, a university, Russian Orthodox church on the day I was leaving, and an open air market. And I did some reports. And I spent a lot of time in Mariupol as well, which, it's a very sad situation, even though they're rebuilding. And when I got back to the U.S., I was put on a Ukrainian kill list, Vorit's kill list. And, I've suggested to, and I went through Russia. Russia asked me to do this. If the U.S. had asked me to do this, I would have done it. The Brits had asked me to do it, I would have done it. And the French, I would have done it. But none of them would. And I figured, okay, I'll do it. And I spoke. And, of course, I went in there. Cornell West, I know we're going to talk about him, never reads a speech. And I'm of that old school, being that I started in Las Vegas back in 1975 as a stand-up comedian there, turning into a political satirist. When I was there, I worked to open lounges there. So you had to work off the top of your head most of the time. You're doing 6 shows a night, which I had to do at the Hosni and the Sahara. And so when I looked at the Security Council, and I said, wait, I'm older than everybody here. Why am I intimidated? So I had a long speech. If I read it, it would have been 2 weeks long. So I just jettisoned it and started speaking from the top of my head. And that was it. And, it was interesting. And I'm glad that I did it. Who knows? There may be some blowback by the U.S. government now that they're cracking down on a lot of journalists and people that are speaking for peace in Eastern Europe, because we have so much at stake here. And I'm talking about a nuclear war. We're on the precipice of a nuclear war, I believe, and then it's all over. So
someone's got to go out there and try to, even if you're unsuccessful, to put this to an end, talk peace like Kennedy did with Khrushchev back in 1962.
Yeah, I understand.
That's the backdrop of it, the long and short of it.
Yeah, I understand. It's interesting. I did a show, the Radical Imagination show here, right at the beginning of the war. Mm-hmm. And I had several Ukrainian activists on and actors, I think a couple of actors and so on, actresses. And again, I was speaking as host here. I wanted to give them a forum and trying to be fair and balanced about everything as possible. And I too was very, very worried about the possibilities of this blowing up into a nuclear confrontation. And make a long story short, I thought it was a rather mild show in a sense, in the terms of the questions I was that I was asking. And I noticed shows later on that Noam Chomsky was, on and so on, asking similar questions. The point is, that's the only show I've ever done that got canceled. And that was because of some of the pressures that these people that I had on put. So I understand, I really do, the emotions involved in this, but we've got to push on and ask the tough questions, I think, about war and peace. And I admire you so much for really going out there in the front lines. And
well, I had to go out there. Listen, because the journalists weren't going out there. You understand?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of media attention on the one Wall Street Journal reporter that was arrested. He was way out there in Eastern Russia rather than being in Western Russia and in the Russian Federation countries of the DPR and the Lugansk People's Republic, which the Russians call them, the Ukrainians would call them something else. I don't want to get into that, but they weren't in that side. They were either in Kiev or this guy who was out there and not covering where I was. Nobody was covering where I was. And so I said, well, let me go ahead and give it a shot. And I got to tell you something. It was a scary thing. It was a very scary thing from the beginning to end. In fact, the day before we went out there, I was at a first aid training course with a bunch of journalists who accompanied me. There were 5 of us all together, and they're talking about this first aid training. It was only 2 hours, how to put tourniquets on, and they're talking about where the pressure points are with your knees and with your elbows to prevent gangrene from setting in. All of this stuff, and the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. I said, whoa. Look, I'm 68 years old at the time. I see like Mr. Magoo. I'm not going to be able to. You're in a red zone here, and I get hit by a HIMARS missile or IED or whatever. I'm going to run. I'm not putting tourniquets on. I don't know how to do that. So I'm not going. I am not going. And I said, I'm sorry. This is a lot more than I bargained for. They said, all right, let's go out and at least say goodbye to each other before we embark on our trip to Rostov and then into Donbass. I said, okay, I'll have it. I don't drink, right? I was totally sober, but you do what the Russians do that day, and they put a shot of Russian standard in front of me. We all had to do like that scene in War and Peace where they all do the hurrah. So we did the hurrah, and then another one, being that I'm an alcoholic, I'm not supposed to drink. The next thing you know, I woke up in the morning and I was on a train 4 hours out of Moscow to Rostov. So they got me drunk and rolled me into that train, and off we went. And I woke up with a big hangover and scared to death.
Yeah,
I'm glad I went. I'll be honest with you. I'm glad that I went. I'm glad they got me drunk, even though I broke sobriety. I'm glad I went out there to do this because it was something that will be etched in my head for the rest of my life. I considered it an accomplishment, and I reported back. I did a lot of television shows.
Yes, I've seen those clips. And thank you very much for doing that. I admire and respect you so much. You've got.
Can you imagine me doing that? Seriously?
Well, yeah. I mean, it would take a half a bottle of vodka to probably.
Half a bottle. There was like 5 empty bottles with it, and they were drinking on the train. They were probably putting it down my throat while I was sleeping. But That being said, being in an armored vehicle for a 4-hour drive and everyone's chain smoking that dark Russian tobacco, and I'm saying, please open up the window. I'm suffocating back here. They said, what window? What window? You're in an armored vehicle, you know?
Well, the good news is that you're sober again, right?
Yes.
Since then?
Yes.
All right. So
maybe I'll make it to this show. So
all right. Well, we certainly will help you do that. And well, actually, let's segue into the Middle East here. Now, wow, we've had reports.
I really try not to talk about the Middle East. It's so divisive. I've lost so many friends. I live in New York City. 99% of my friends are Jews. Okay, most of them and I are on the same page. Seriously, I have one Italian friend who just died. And it's so divisive, and it really, I mean, I've talked about it. You know where I stand on it.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate. Look, I've had difficulties, as you know. I'm Greek on my father's side, and we'll talk about Diogenes. Get into him too, the philosophy of the Cynics. We'll get to the Greeks in due time too. But I'm Russian Jewish on the other side, and I've really battled my own soul about what's going on. And I know Rabbi Lerner was in the forefront of the prophetic voice that I think you are trying to also, in your own work, display, and that is we need to speak truth to power. And if we're going to really be true to our values, we need to love the other and love the stranger. And certainly the policies of the present government in Israel has not done that. Now, okay, without saying that, I've tried very hard in this show to present a whole bunch of people that would present different viewpoints and bring us. It's not a matter of trying to create even more disruption. But for example, I've had people on who represented combatants for peace, who I found very, very interesting and very important. And actually, when I taught at yeshivas, it was about 15, 20 years ago, I had a member of combatants for peace on. It happened to be an Israeli soldier, a refusenik of his day, and a decorated member of the IDF and the Israel Defense Force, who refused to fight in the West Bank and so on, and the so-called occupied territories. Anyway, the combatants for peace members were Palestinian who served time in an Israeli prison, and a former member of the IDF getting together, and they have a viable, growing peace movement. And they're talking about, even now, even today, how they can bridge the gap and begin to transform the world in the Middle East into a more loving, more appreciative world that understands each other's traumas. And I think, last point here, what I would like to see the left do more of is to give a more balanced approach to the traumas that both sides have experienced. It hasn't been healthy. And so the Jewish friends, your Jewish friends, mine, have to understand that they've been a traumatized people, but also Palestinians and much of the Arab world have been traumatized by their own colonial experience. Somehow we have to come to grips with that. I would like to see more protests on the left advocating that sort of interaction. There's enough blame to go around. So what do you think about that?
Well, what I think about it is, look, I was lucky. I grew up in Southern California. When I was in sixth grade, right, there were a couple of Italians, and my two best friends were Mark Bruner and Mark Silver. All right, so two Jews, and we saw in sixth grade Night and Fog. You know the documentary Night and Fog. All right, so we saw that early on. So, and I've been a student of the Holocaust, and it's a horrible thing, and all the years gone. Just reading a book right now talking about pogroms in 1369 and Frederick the Great, what he did to Mendelssohn and all of that. So people got to know that history well. And, and I follow the Auschwitz Memorial on Twitter. I'll tweet them out. I just don't, this government right now in Israel does not represent Judaism as far as I'm concerned. They don't. And if you criticize them, I'm not criticizing Israelis. I'm not criticizing Jews or Israelis, and that can't be conflated with anti-Semitism because you oppose this government's policy. Because I don't think it's a policy of everybody there. They could have found a different way to navigate them out of this. The two-state solution, for instance, but which I think is dead in the water now.
But you would advocate something like a two-state solution,
something
right?
like that. Israel's not leaving. All right, so let's say that they're not going to go.
And Palestinians aren't either. Exactly.
And so the thing is that, but what really bothers me is that I get criticized if I criticize this government, and then Netanyahu does not represent any of the Jews that I know. Okay, and this far right, I consider far right fanatical government around him that doesn't represent Israel. And to criticize that's my opinion. To criticize that is and for people to get annoyed with that and being critical of Netanyahu and strong language would be the same if somebody said, look, I hate Italians because of what Mussolini did in Ethiopia. What he did in Ethiopia and in World War II did not represent all of Italian history. All right. So I don't consider you anti-Italian to slam Mussolini. All right. So if
I got your back on that, Randy. I agree with that. I got your back on that. But here's the other thing. You have extremists on the other side who want to there are people within Hamas, within Hezbollah, and so on in Iran who do not and will not tolerate Jews on the land there. They just don't believe they existed. That has to be dealt with by the West. I'm sorry, by the protesters as well on the left, because not acknowledging that is not going to get us anywhere.
Well,
there are extremists on both sides.
Jews have been there for 2,000 years, and they always got along with Muslims. I mean, for all of the up until the beginning of the 20th century, they always were able to cohabit that area. I don't know what happened. It's something I want to get into a deep dive into right now because
exactly same here.
It can be misinterpreted. All I can do is pray because there's nothing I can do to stop it. All I can do is pray that it comes to an end and everybody love one another because we're all human beings. I don't believe in race to begin with. We're all the same. We're all the same. What you see here is a suit. My face and my skin, that's a suit. The rest of it is inside, in your head. You know what I mean? So
it's social construction, absolutely. It's not genetic.
Race and hating people because of race is ridiculous. We're all the same. I'm a Jew. I'm black. I'm all of that. So why do we have this hatred towards one another?
Really, you look Italian to me. All right, that was all right.
Marx.
That's your little Italian.
What was his name? The Harvard impression. You ever
Chico Marx hat.
Hey,
right?
Monday we go to the Firefly's house. Come out. He wasn't home. Tuesday we go to the ball game. He foolish. He no show up.
There you go.
It was a double header. No one show up. All right. Hey, I'm all right with me, but I got a partner. You're Emmanuel Ravelli? Hey, I'm Emmanuel Ravelli. That's what I used to do in Las Vegas before I got political. I would be doing old impressions of actors back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. I was doing Humphrey Bogart. I'll tell you, I do Rodney Dangerfield. I would do Jack Nicholson. It was just like really starting out back then. And George C. Scott from Patton. Jimmy Cagney, Stick, Small Town, Stick, Diffuse, Hitch Road, Pick Pictures. All right, enough of that.
Actually, no, not enough of that. No, wait a minute. I'm the host here. And that's not enough. No, but listen, how great you are at that. Now, is that a natural thing? Yeah. You have to really work at that?
I worked my butt off for many years. I'd be in, now when you drive in a car and you're talking, and it looks like you're talking to yourself. No one thinks you're talking to yourself. But back then, I would be working on my impressions as I was driving. Like one gig I had Champaign County. I drove from Las Vegas all the way to Champaign County and worked on impressions with one of those with flatbed tape cassette players, and you listen to the voice, then you turn it on the other side and you try to do the same voice, and you keep working on it and working on it. I spent so many hours. They weren't all as easy as Reagan. Now, Reagan was an easy guy to do, but many of them were not. And I will just say this. I worked with the great Mickey Rooney, and I worked with Mickey Rooney in 1992. He said, that's the best Mickey Rooney I've ever heard. Lad, I really like the way you work. I did a show with him for about 4 or 5 months. Great.
Yeah. And
many of those guys back then, I'll tell my story. Now, that was those are easy ones to do, all right? Harry Bailey went to war. He saved every guy on that transport. And then he got older, and his voice got like this. He did that show, Hawkins, and he did the soup commercials. And he watched Brendan the same way. He was like this when he was young, and then he got older, he got higher and higher.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking of Jonathan Winters too.
Yeah, he didn't do impression, but he did.
We did a little bit about the
great characters. Jonathan Winters was
the characters, right? Exactly. But you're Al Sharpton, of course, that we heard.
I think it's important that you stop talking about the Reverend Sharpton. I think that never mind. All right, Sharpton.
All right, Cornel West.
I can't do Cornell's voice because I'd start like, it's the whole thing. And you go back to Lydia Child. You got Reverend Hunter. You got David Attenborough. He comes up, but it's very difficult when I interview him on audio and try to make it into a video because there's so many people that he refers to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Try to put up one after another so people know what he's talking about. Reverend Parker, Thomas Wentworth Dickinson. He knows this. No matter where you go with him, it's like you can't get one. And I did the last time I talked to him, I talked about Diogenes. It gets into Aristotle and Aristophanes and Plato.
I've gotten into that with him too. The different schools.
I saw that. That was a great interview. I was there live. Yeah,
absolutely. And thank you so very much for being right. And so Diogenes. Let's go.
He's so brilliant and so articulate.
Well, since we're talking about it, isn't this the way the left needs to go, progressives, in terms of an individual?
I don't know what that means anymore. What is progressive? What is the left?
Yeah.
Like when you say Attila the Hun, I'm to the right of Attila the Hun. What does that mean? Was Attila the Hun against Social Security? Was he, against, minimum wage? I don't know. What is that?
Well, you're right. Look, you've got a point. Cornell does refer to himself as part of that old left tradition, though, too. Right. But he's established his own party, as you know, Justice for All Party. Right. He talks about radical love, which the left has, and of course, Michael Lerner talked about it too as well. And it's interesting that both of them wrote a book together, Blacks and Jews, Let the Healing Begin, right, which I remember using very successfully at Yeshiva University. But you're right. Labels, we need to go beyond the labels, as Reverend Barber would put it. They're puny.
You can't be pigeonholed with a label because you know what I mean. You can't buy a label, and
but there's one of the title of this show is Imagining Our Visionaries Among Us. So people need to have a vision. Maybe that's a word we could use here. What is, in your opinion, your own vision of a better world?
I don't know. Most of what Thomas More wrote about Utopia, I suppose, without the death penalty in it. But something like that, where we all, first of all, we're not there yet. We're not there spiritually yet. We are in the dark ages. Say when we look at the 15th century, 16th century, and we think just because we're current that we reach the epitome, we reach the acme of knowledge and spirituality. We're not even, we've got many generations, centuries to go for it to be possible. But all we can do is lay the groundwork right now for that to happen. And this conversation right now is part of laying that groundwork. And if other people would do it as well, we got to all love our brother. We're all the same, and we're all the same with all the animals. We all come from the same. You take a look at the DNA, and we all come.
Right.
You know, the three of three, and people get mad, especially racists. And I feel sorry for racists. They just haven't. They're still in the dark ages, late dark ages, or anti-Semites, they live in the dark ages because we're all the same.
And
The oldest fossils come from Ethiopia and
exactly.
and Kenya and somewhere else in Africa, and then Java later on. So we know that that we all come from that area, and some people navigated to warmer climates or colder climates, and they develop white skin, all that stuff. We were all the same. So you got to get the foundation right and come to grips with it, that we are all the same. And this is fratricide. All of this stuff is fratricide, you know?
And some of us, like you and me, come from the Mediterranean, where our people bathe in olive oil. So
we're olive skinned.
We're olive skinned. There we go.
I'm not Norwegian. I'm from Norwegian.
You're not? No, okay. But but we all agree, I think we both agree, right? We should be throwing carcasses of large animals into dead carcasses of large animals into Central Park.
Right.
I mean, what the hell is that about? Okay.
I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about, but that would take much of our 51 minutes if we get into that discussion.
No, Bobby Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
So I don't know where his head was at. But I'm just
I have no idea. You know, he's all over the map.
All right, I got it. Listen, I want to get back to Diogenes and also, of course, when I met you, in our trial there, stop and frisk, and your connection to your incredible battle, almost, well, all right, not single-handedly, but you were out there from the very beginning and before, if we could.
The Rockefeller drug law movement.
Yeah, getting people to think and talk about the Rockefeller drug laws. You've had an impact that must give you a tremendous gratification. Now, let's talk a little about that. Your own father spending 10 years in prison prior to your birth, and then bringing all that, crap and agita.
Let me expand on that.
Please.
I'm in prison. It's from Italian American. Now we know second generation Italians, they're not really good on race. I mean, you go out to Bensonhurst. I mean, some are, some aren't. But that neighborhood my father grew up in Ohio wasn't so good on it. You talk to some of my aunts and uncles from back, 10, 20 years ago when they were alive, they would still use that N-word a little bit. My father never did, because when he went to jail, all right, when he was in jail, he was a safe cracker. And when he was in jail, he was a male nurse on the tuberculosis ward, and it was 100% black, okay? So a lot of stories came from that. He ran this place called the Royal Tahitian, which had all sorts of entertainment from Louis Armstrong, who I got to see a million times, James Brown, Ramsey Lewis,
and the trio.
Ontario, California. Ella Fitzgerald was there. The Four Tops were there. Ray Charles. It went on and on. Even a white black man, which would be Bobby Darin. He's had the soul of a black man. Singer. And so I was around that. My father was around that. And the prison experience and growing up in Southern California, and this is inland, it was not like a progressive area. In the 60s, there were like race riots at my school. So I was able to, only because if my father didn't do that time in prison, who knows where I would have gone? I wouldn't be here today. Cause and effect, yes, there's cause and effect. Do I have any free will? I don't think so. I think that just one thing led to the next, and here I am today. And then I met Bill Kunstler in '86, and then I said, all right, I'm really going full speed ahead with this. In '97, when he died, on this day, Bill Kunstler died, by the way, September 4th, 1990.
Really?
Yes.
Blessings and honor. But
and so,
great man. Unbelievable.
Running his organization, the Wayne Moses Country Fund for Racial Justice for the next 10 years.
But Reddy, for a minute, revisit your own father, because I know Kunstler has to be another father figure in a sense. But so what did you feel? How did you then how was that experience that your father had that he brought home, and you experienced at home?
It was not good on many levels.
Yeah, and translate into your
Because
activism against the
he
drug
was
war.
angry, just like, and that's why I feel so, attuned and can identify when people get out of prison. I know what it does to them. I got a lot of my friends who I helped get out of prison. A lot of people are now my friends have been for the last 25 years. Who I helped get out of prison, and they never got well. All right, they were in the toaster too long, and you really can't. And my father never really overcame all of that, and he was an angry guy. Never hit me. He had a rageaholic sometimes, but he had a lot of love, and he didn't tolerate racism, and so he didn't hear any of those epithets. And he was pro habido in the Credico house, and we had all the black entertainers come to our house. My father would barbecue, the guys in the band with Mike Bettany and the guy who was the guy who played the jazz violin, Stuff Smith. These guys.
I don't know him.
Jazz violin.
Jazz violin, right? Wow.
Yeah. What's his name would know him? Our friend Cornell West. When he's not talking about Coltrane, he'll talk about Stuff Smith, right? And,
I'll ask him. Jazz violin.
Yeah. So he was. So they, the black players. I remember a guy Buzz coming over to play the vibes, and so it was so good. Not everybody in my neighborhood was afforded the opportunity to see that we were all the same. You know what I mean? So, I've always battled, against the Vietnam War and all of that, against racism. And Bill Kunstler introduced me to a lot of people, Stokely Carmichael, and, a whole lot of people when I came into his orbit for 10 years in 1986. And like I said, all right, getting back to my father, the two Williams that I am, all right, my DNA is the William Kunstler, under his tutelage and close. I mean, I lived at the house half the time. When one of my girlfriends throw me out, he'd say, "Come in here, come over here, come home." And then William Credico and William Kunstler, those two people are really define who I am today. They're the ones that it was that admixture that define my character, or at least the path that I've taken, and not even wittingly. It just happens. All right. These things happen. There's no free will in this thing. It just happened. You're an enlightened guy. Cornell's an enlightened guy. He will be studied for many years afterwards. His speeches, and I know he's going to be like Bill Kunstler until the very end. He's going to be laying it out. There's a groundwork there that people would follow, study, and emulate.
But and you're there too, and you're so enlightened. But your creativity came out through your satiric and comedic genius. And wouldn't you say, I mean, it wasn't.
I don't know if I have a sense of humor anymore. I really don't know if I have a sense of humor. There's a different driving force back then. I mean, I got to see all the comedians back then as well. David Fry.
Yeah, go ahead.
David Fry, and I watch some of these programs. Mort Saul,
right.
David Fry, and Carlin, but Lenny Bruce, but Dick Gregory. I got to hang out with Dick Gregory, man, when I was a kid, and then I had him on my show 5 or 6 times before he died. Dick Gregory is one of the greatest minds, and made the biggest sacrifices as a comedian on the same level as Paul.
He gave up Hollywood.
Paul Robeson.
Hollywood,
right? He could have been Flip Wilson if you wanted to.
Oh, bigger than Flip Wilson.
No one remembers Flip Wilson, but they remember him. Godfrey Cambridge was good as well, but Dick Gregory was a brilliant comedian.
Yeah.
But he put all of his energy into activism, the same way Paul Robeson was able to do them both, right? Do the activism and perform. But Dick Gregory just put everything into it, and on so many different levels, whether it be on diet, that was revolutionary, the way he would give you these.
Hey, I took that stuff, Bahamian diet.
Yeah, but like I said,
I don't know if it worked.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I don't know if it worked. I took it. I trusted him, and we had an alternative graduation at Columbia with him as a guest speaker. I got to meet him. And
did you? Oh, that's great.
Unbelievable. But what was I going to say? Yeah, Dick Gregory. But
I performed with him I tell you one time that I performed with Dick Gregory,
Wow.
it was
What an honor.
when I met him again. He didn't remember the Royal Tahitian, but I met with him in '91, the 20-year anniversary of the Attica Rebellion, and we had a big thing at Cayman Baptist Church. Bill Kunstler, the big black Akil, all of the brothers, Attica brothers, Margaret Kunstler, Liz Fink, and so many others. Barry Crimmins performed there, but Dick Gregory, I got the honor of seeing him for the first time in, I guess, 25 years. And but he didn't remember me that well, but he remembered the work in that place in Southern California. And but he was. That was one of the great events, 20 years, and here it is. We're going to have another anniversary coming up next week of the Attica Rebellion on the 11th to the 9th to the 13th.
Yeah, we're still. I'm working with psychiatrist James Gilligan and Bandy Lee. We're going to be going up to Coxsackie Prison, and we're going to develop a pilot program there, showing them that they can do away with solitary confinement. So
I wish people get more involved in. Go visit prisons. All right, it's in the Bible. All right, you visit the prison. I have visited hundreds of prisons during that whole Rockefeller, those years of the Rockefeller drug law movement, and down in Tulia, Texas. I visited the prisons there when we worked on the Tulia 46 drug sting case, that racist drug sting, and I visited the prison. It's tough. You go in there and you walk out, the guy's still there. Going back into and it's brutal. Prison is brutal. We could talk about prisons overseas in different countries in the Med East, but we got them right here, and people should.
Oh, believe me, yes. And when next time I see you in person, and I want to give you a book by Stanley Howard, and I want to introduce you to him. I mean, we'll have him on your show. He was just on Felipe Luciano's show.
Yeah. Felipe is a good friend of mine. WB.
Yeah, he was just out here, did a gig at Bridgehampton bookstore, Barnes and Noble. But Stanley Howard was part of a police scandal and the DA scandal in Chicago. And he just got out a few months ago. He was in prison for 39 years, 16 years on death row for a crime he didn't commit. He's got a great book out, Tortured by Blue. And I'm going to give it to you when I...
Boy, I'll tell you, it's difficult. I have a hard time because I spent so much time in those prisons. And it's like you finally give up. There was a priest up there. He used to go to the special housing units up there in, I forgot, mid-state prison. And he actually had a heart attack. It was so difficult for him. He'd been visiting these people in special housing units. It's torture. It's complete psychological torture. You walk out, nobody cares because there's no oversight by the state government, the local government. There's no really inspector general that gives a damn about what happens to these people. But we've all got to be cognizant of it. We can't just keep talking about what goes on in Europe and the Mid East and all that. We got that right here. And we can't ignore it,
Absolutely.
We got to set the example. We got to set the example of love for our brothers, and we don't have it here.
And we tried to do that. That's where we met at the trial for stop and frisk. I got to ask you, generally, look, personally, no regrets, right, Randy?
No. It was it laid the groundwork. That was it.
No, I'm talking about your whole life. Your whole life.
I would say that was one of the greatest moments in my time in life, because I know in terms of activism, that day that Carl Dix and Cornell organized that first event going up to Harlem, and Cornell talked about this with me the other day about us being inside and made the best of it, singing all of those Motown tunes and other tunes from the 60s. And I even played a hit, "Why Don't You Build Me Up?" I mean, to hear him sing Buttercup was worth the price of admission. I remember I got pictures. We first got in there. I took pictures inside the jail cell. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were so incompetent.
He didn't take my phone, and I sent them to the New York Times, Corey Kilgunner, as I was in the jail cell. And it wasn't until we got moved to a different warren of prison cells or jail cells to be processed. Did they take the phone away from me? So by that time, the cat was out of the bag, and it was all over the New York Times.
Amazing. But we thought that was going to be like we're going to be there couple hours or something. The
Never.
trial lasted a week, and we did have an impact for a while. But the struggle keeps going on, and we're back to having a mayor recommending the same crap that didn't work.
Right. Well, they don't run the city, man. It's just once you get in there, you're looking at all that power. All right, it's like I'm going to go climb Mount Everest, and you get there and say, without all of the guide and all the equipment that you have to do to scale Mount Everest, you're not going to do it. So that's what happens. You become mayor. I mean, it happened to.
Which of course you ran for governor, you ran for senator, but.
I ran, not like Cornell. Cornell is actually, I don't know, he's not trying to, but he's certainly making, he's out there getting issues out. I ran for the same reason, but mine was, what do you call it? Performance art. Is because if I thought I was going to win, I wouldn't have run. All right. Senate, governor, and mayor. They were never going to let me win anyway.
Right. Well, Cornell has made enormous progress. He's on this write-in list, right? For I don't know how many states now. I just got an email from him. So he's succeeding in his own struggles here. It's a moment in the movement.
A lot of attention. It's good that he's able to express it. And
absolutely.
All the others. I'm sorry that Jill Stein took a cheap shot at him, which he should have never done.
Well, there again, the left has this way about itself. But
I don't know if she's to the left or to the right, or it's because she's rich. I don't know. She feels privileged. But Cornell you never think, well, I feel privileged. Cornell is just out there, he says, and he knows he's on a mission.
Yeah.
A God-inspired mission. I mean, he's got he's got the civil rights movement behind him. He's got the black church behind him. He's got the traditional black musical history that we have behind him, and that's what inspires him. You can see it, the fire in his eyes, like John Brown, a nonviolent John Brown.
Absolutely. And we're going to carry it on with him too as well. But listen, we got to spend a few minutes on Diogenes here.
All right, we'll talk about that.
Where did he, this is this Greek philosopher it was part of the school of cynics.
Right. The Aristophanes school.
Yeah. You
was,
say it better than me.
Contemporary of Plato, and right after Socrates, he was a contemporary. And I don't know the history like Cornell knows the history, but he's really a cool guy. I said if I was around that's who I'd want to be. Is Diogenes from Sinope. There's a couple of Diogenes, and he first went to Athens. They said his father said to, or the Oracle of Delphi or whatever said, you're going to go there and change the currency, right? And so he went over there and he got arrested for bending coins and melting coins. Don't bend that currency, the political currency. And so he was let go. First thing he does, he cuts loose his slave Manus. And someone said, why would you cut loose your slave Manus? He says, well, if Manus seems he can live without me, I should be able to live without Manus. And so he lets the guy go. There are some gems, and I don't know if they're apocryphal or not, but I like him because he, like Cornel West, a great writer, but he didn't believe in the written word though. He didn't read any, and he would go out there and ad-lib everything. But he never wrote anything down. And that's why he did not like Plato, because Plato wrote everything down. He says, well, you can edit, you can go back there, you can make changes. And is it really free thought coming out? And that's what his philosophy is. Now, for me, it could be an excuse for being lazy. I don't want to write anything down. But just the way he lived. They called him the dog because he lived in the barrel. And he would
lived in a barrel and gave up
the dog. They called him the dog. And Alexander the Great, he was very famous. Alexander the Great was out in the desert, on a hot day, and he's out there meditating. And Alexander the Great lionized at the guy. He said, "Great Diogenes, I love you. You're the greatest. I'm totally influenced, and I just adore you. Blah 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 blah. Is there anything I can do for you, my hero?" And he turned to Alexander the Great and said, "Yeah, you can move to the left. You're blocking the sun."
There you go. Simple, basic.
There's so many gems by him.
Yeah. No, but so
Well, I dressed.
what did you do?
Door to door, by the way, in the daytime.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know exactly how it went down, but he supposedly went in the daytime. You get a lantern in the daytime, going door to door with a lantern, looking for an honest man. All right,
Knocking on people's door and asking them. Yeah.
Yes, looking for an honest man. Like he just was so cynical. Everyone's got a degree of people. Cornell would say gangsta in them, right? I mean, there's a lot of people. Everyone's got that percentage of bullshit in them. Excuse my language. But not Diogenes. Diogenes probably did too. Yes, but he was looking door to door for an honest man. So I took that. I said, "This is a great idea. I want to go up to Albany." And I got a toga, which I don't think he wore a toga. It was a Roman thing, but I got a toga at Halloween pop-up store.
That's your Italian influence.
Yeah, no, I was looking for something. It was Merlin or whatever, long thing, with a long wig and an old man's mask. And I got
you had sandals. So,
and I got a staff made out of wood or whatever, and I got a lantern. And I went into, I went inside. What do you call it? The lantern was snuck in because it was a gas lantern by Fred Dicker, who was the radio host on the third floor. He snuck in the back way, and I used it and went into a Senate hearing on ethics. Right, so I went with the lantern, and everyone is completely stunned by me and immobile once they see me. And I knew a lot of these state senators, and so that picture, me holding it up in the hall, made it on Greek television. Made it on AP, took photos of it, and I was interviewed a lot. And then I got well known for doing it as Diogenes when I ran for Senate or mayor in 2013. I went to these debates that I was frozen out of, and I'd go there as Diogenes. And and the New York Times, one of the Department of Philosophy head, I can't think of it right now, wrote an article. Diogenes reappears after 1,000.
So there you go. Enormous. Listen, I knew this was going to happen. We haven't covered your work with Julian Assange and so on.
My God.
There's so many things. I don't know. We got a couple minutes. I knew this was going to happen. We got to keep another show, but give us
another show on the side. What can I tell you about Assange? I worked on it for 8 years. But I've moved on. I mean, that battle's on. I don't want to rest on those laurels. I moved
What are
on.
you doing now? Right now,
What
are you working on now?
I'm doing a movie this next week, couple of weeks. I'm working on the anti-nuclear war project, beginning with September 28th with others up in what's the name of the city? Kingston. There's going to be a big rally up there against nuclear war.
Okay.
Huh?
Way upstate.
New York State.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in Kingston, the old capital. So that's coming on the 28th. And, I'm doing what I can. I'm working on other projects. I do a radio show at BAI, Progressive Radio Network. I have one on Monday, and then I do a podcast.
Monday, what time is that for our listeners?
10 a.m. on Monday on Progressive Radio Network.
Okay.
3 o'clock on Friday.
Wait a minute, Randy. Progressive Radio Network. This show is on Progressive. That's Gary Knowles.
Yes, right. Yes. So
okay. All right. So we're on the
59
same
minutes,
network.
man. You got 59 minutes if it's on PRN. You got to Progressive Radio Network. You got to.
I'm on Thursdays at 10 a.m.
Wow. So I'm on Monday and you're on Thursday.
All right. So look.
The Assange thing. There's so many people being popped left and right and being bullied by Western powers in France and the UK on journalists, on truth tellers and journalists. So this is very scary. It's ominous, and so I don't know how much can you do.
We're doing what we can do, and I really, all my love goes out to you. I admire, respect you, and we're comrades and colleagues and friends. So the end and
we're
beyond.
Former convictees, all right?
Former convictees too. I enjoyed our time. We didn't even get to that.
I know. Time goes by fast when you don't have a script.
All right. Listen, I think we're over time, and Tiffany, our producer, is going to get really angry at me again, rightfully. Randy, thank you. Really bless you, all my love, and I admire you so much, as I said. And thank you again for doing the show.
I love it. Anytime, my friend.
Yeah, and let's get together with Cornell. We're going to carry on. All right? All right, man. Take care. All the best. And thank you so very, very much for watching us once again on The Radical Imagination. This is Jim Vredos. We'll see you again next week on The Radical Imagination.
If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know. Don't really care. Let there be songs to fill the air. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble tossed, nor wind to blow. Reach out your hand. If your cup be empty, if your cup is full, may it be again, let it be known